There's Colin. Are you guys seeing me logged in twice?
Yes.
Is that Colin? Huh.
Well, you're not echoing, so I wouldn't worry about it.
Okay. He must have gone into I don't know. I don't know.
Hey, everyone, if you're just joining, this is Josh with Southwest Energy Efficiency Project. We're going to let some people join in, and we're going to start at about 1 minute after. So thanks for joining. And I think we selected that you should be automatically have your cameras turned off, but if for some reason that's not working, please just turn your cameras off. You should already be muted. Thank you. All right, I think we can start.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for Electric Bicycles 101. My name is Amy Miller. I'm here in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and I do some work with the Land of Enchantment Clean Cities Coalition. Land of Enchantment Clean Cities Coalition is a nonprofit organization that's part of a larger U.S. Department of Energy's Vehicle Technologies Office's Clean Cities Network. And there are more than 100 coalitions that work in communities across the United States to implement alternative fuels, fuel-saving technologies and practices, and new mobility choices. Today with me is Tammy Feeblecorn from the Southwest Energy Efficiency Project that we always call SWEEP. SWEEP is a public interest nonprofit organization advancing energy efficiency, beneficial electrification, and clean transportation in Arizona, Nevada, New Mexico, Utah, and Wyoming. Tammy is an elected official at the local level here in Albuquerque, and her work with SWEEP, she's done a lot of transformative work around energy affordability, energy efficiency, and clean transportation issues. Also with us today is John Williamson. He is the Transportation Electrification Program Manager at PNM. PNM is the largest investor-owned utility in New Mexico, serving more than 530,000 customers throughout the state. And John is responsible for putting together their programs that are filed with the Public Regulation Commission to incent alternative fuel vehicle use, specifically around electric vehicle and electric vehicle charging infrastructure. So thank you for joining us today. Real briefly, we're going to spend about 45 minutes today going over what are the basics of e-bikes, the public interest in electric bikes, benefits of them, some of the details that you need to think through if you're looking at purchasing one, looking at leasing one, or looking at setting up some kind of electric bicycle program in your community, we're going to highlight a few communities that are doing some fantastic pilot work around getting more electric bicycles on their streets in their communities. And then John is going to finish up and tell us a little bit about what P&M is proposing in the communities it serves around electric bicycles. John, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Amy, and thank you to everybody for your time and attention today. So electric assist bicycles, or e-bikes, are growing in popularity as more folks seek new ways to meet their transportation needs. Some of the ways that they're using electric bikes include commuting to and from work and running basic errands. E-bikes are very similar to traditional bicycles, and many have components that are very similar, right? So you'll notice that most e-bikes have handlebars, frame, wheels, pedals, brakes, all the same kind of components that you'd expect on a normal bicycle. But e-bikes are very different from traditional bikes in the way that their drivetrain works, because it incorporates an electric motor and a battery, which provides assistance to riders. E-bike designs incorporate two different but basic motor setups. The first one is a hub drive motor, which is normally mounted in the rear wheel hub. Rear hub motors are simple, durable, affordable, but they can be inefficient, especially at higher speeds. Other e-bikes use a mid-drive motor, usually mounted in the center of the bike where the pedal is attached to the bike frame. And these types of motors can handle a wider range of torque and speed, but they can be really expensive and difficult to maintain. There's three different types of electric bicycles. Amy, if we'll go to the next slide for me, thank you. So class 1 electric bikes, or e-bikes. So these are e-bikes that are pedal assist only, and they don't have an independent throttle to control the electric motor. Class 1 bikes have a maximum assisted speed of 20 miles per hour. Class 2 e-bikes also have a maximum assisted speed of 20 miles per hour, but they incorporate a throttle. This allows the rider to utilize power from the electric motor without pedaling. And then class 3 e-bikes, these are really very similar to class 1 e-bikes. The difference is that the electric assist will help up to 28 miles per hour. And with that, I think I will pass it to,
Thank you, John. Interest in e-bikes is really increasing throughout the United States and throughout the world. You may have seen some e-bikes in your community. You may have tried it when you were traveling and being a tourist somewhere. But there is a strong interest. And let me give you some statistics. In 2021, more than 800,000 e-bikes were sold in the US, compared to 608,000 electric cars and trucks. That is up from 450,000 e-bike sales in 2020. Colorado is the leader in electric vehicle sales, with 20,000 sold in 2022. But the top selling electric vehicle was actually the e-bike, which outsold EVs by 10 to 20%. And the slide that you're looking at here goes over, it's the results of a survey that was conducted earlier this year, and it related to the proposed federal e-bike act, which was introduced in Congress in March of 2023. It would offer individual consumers a refundable 30% tax credit for purchasing an electric bike, up to $1,500 credit for new bicycles less than $8,000. The credit would be allowed once per individual every 3 years, and twice for a joint return couple buying 2 electric bicycles. New to this version is this addition of income caps that parallel the electric vehicle tax credits. An annual salary of $150,000 for single filers, and $225,000 for heads of households. And people are interested in e-bikes for a variety of different reasons. They're wanting to get some exercise, and we will talk about those benefits in a few minutes, but also they want to be part of reducing transportation emissions in their communities. Transportation emissions are now the most significant greenhouse gas emission in many states and many cities throughout the United States. So people feel like they're making a difference by reducing their auto usage and participating in leasing or buying an electric vehicle. So just a few of the e-bike individual benefits. I know that some traditional cyclists will go, oh, look at that guy going up the hill. They're not having to make any effort. But there is some research that suggests that e-bikes still provide moderate physical activity on flat segments and downhill segments, and some vigorous activity on uphill segments. E-bikes also lower the need for a person to shower after riding, which is attractive to people who are commuting to work or to meetings. And they require less exertion and higher levels of enjoyment. Another study found that e-bike riders haven't elevate their breathing and heart rates enough to count as a meaningful workout. You know, it goes without saying, definitely going up a hill on an electric bicycle is much easier. And I've seen this along Indian School here in Albuquerque, but I see a lot more people that seem to be commuting to work. And people are really reducing their vehicle usage, which is a big goal of electric bicycle programs. For example, in Denver, people who have taken advantage of their voucher program are saying they are biking 26.2 miles overall per week. And that's replacing 3.4 car trips for an average of 21.6 miles of replaced car trips per week. So when you think about that in terms of reduced automobile use in a community, reduced emissions, that's really what we want to be working toward. And then finally, you have the ability to carry cargo on e-bikes. Like John mentioned earlier, there's a variety of different e-bike sizes, designs. Some cargo e-bikes are designed to support carrying capacity of around 300 to 550 pounds. So that can also be a practical usage for electric bicycles. Tammy, I'll turn it over to you for the community benefits.
Thanks, Amy. I think that we all can agree that we need to reduce the number of folks that are driving around in internal combustion engine vehicles. And e-bikes really does provide a good alternative to that. And a lot of the benefits that we can get that Amy talked about for individuals compound to make really strong community-wide benefits from e-bikes. So the first one, reducing vehicle miles traveled. Again, every time we get somebody out of their vehicle and onto an e-bike, we're seeing less of those tailpipe emissions, reduced pollution from those automobiles. But another thing that I hadn't thought of until Amy pointed it out was not only are you reducing the amount of tailpipe emissions, but when you are on an e-bike, those are smaller vehicles that take less carbon intensity in the manufacturing process. And so there's two of those kind of benefits for the environment when you think about emissions from using an e-bike, reduce tailpipe, and then also reduce carbon intensity in the manufacturing process. Also, e-bikes let us do one of the things that is most important to me in this whole thing is reduced traffic on roads. I don't think that any of us want to live in communities where we continually expand roads, make more roads, make them wider, add lanes. Soon we will be just a sea of concrete and asphalt. And so if we can get more folks onto e-bikes out of their vehicles, we can keep roads smaller and safer for the entire community. And when I say safer, I mean not only the health impacts of that emission problem that we talked about, but also we can reduce the number of fatalities for pedestrians and for bikers by having less traffic on the road. And so all of those things combined really do make our communities healthier. Amy mentioned that, you know, you're still getting some cardio help when you're riding an e-bike. There have been studies that show that you're improving mental health. Studies show that e-bikes can help with stroke, spinal cord injury survivors, MS patients, people born with motor function disorders. All of those folks can benefit from the use of an e-bike. And so as we are creating more individuals that are more physically fit and mentally healthy, obviously those kinds of benefits spill over into the community and make our communities better off. So all in all, I think that there's a lot of benefits for communities to incentivize and really prioritize e-bike use. And I think that that's something that every community should be thinking about, especially now as we're really starting to see these sales of these e-bikes on the uptake. Amy?
John, I'll turn it over to you.
So in 2023, Colorado released the Colorado Electric Vehicle Plan, which was obviously released earlier this year. It included e-bikes in development and the development of related policies and incentives as a preeminent focus. Part of its strategy, the Colorado Energy Office teamed up with the U.S. Department of Energy's National Renewable Energy Lab, or NREL, to understand how to increase adoption of e-bikes and how to increase access for folks through the Can Do Colorado e-bike pilot. The 2-year pilot program distributed about 200 e-bikes and 50 e-bike share memberships to low-income essential workers in diverse locations across Colorado. And NREL's Open Path tool was critical to informing the data insights gleaned through the Can Do Colorado e-bike pilot program, which found that e-bikes have substantial energy and emissions advantages in replacing larger motorized modes of transportation for shorter trips. And even when e-bikes replace trips that would otherwise be made by energy advantaged modes, such as personal micromobility or shared car rides, overall net energy outcomes were minimally affected. Savings remained strongly positive, and the mobility improvements resulted in reduced travel time and contributed to a higher quality of life. And this table right here kind of summarizes some of the findings that they had when you compare cargo e-bikes to crossover SUVs.
Okay, now we're going to go. So maybe you're thinking about making an e-bike purchase, and there are lots of things to think through. People have a lot of different questions when they're making this purchase, and as well as they should. And so Tammy's going to go over some of those considerations that you need to think about when you're thinking about purchasing an e-bike.
Thanks, Amy. So yeah, I think it's really important to think through your personal situation, and that will help you determine what kind of e-bike can work for you. Things like the purpose, right? So there are a wide variety of e-bikes on the market today. Some are more for leisure, some are more sport, more commuting. I, for example, am only going to be doing commuting. And so I'm going to be looking for something that can just get me to downtown and back in a manner that doesn't make me too sweaty when I get there, make me too tired when I get home. But there are folks that want to be able to just go out on long Sunday afternoon rides, right? And so just thinking through what you're going to use it for will help you narrow it down. The other thing that folks are really starting to think through, and that I've had a couple of calls about recently, is just storage space and do I need to carry it? One gentleman was saying there's not a place to store e-bikes on the first floor of his work. So he has to carry it up 3 flights of stairs because there's no elevator. And so if it's something that you're going to have to be carrying up 2 flights of stairs every day, you want to think through the weight on that. And then what is your budget? There are e-bikes for every budget price point. I was surprised when I started looking, seriously considering an e-bike, just how wide the range is. And so think through what you want to spend. You also want to think about the battery size and how much power you're going to need. It's a wide variety out there. Some bikes have removable batteries, and some come with additional battery packs. And so depending on how far and how frequently you're going to be using your e-bike, that might be something that you really want to consider. Also range. Are you going to be going a long way? Are you like me? You're going to be going a couple of miles each way. Are you going to be going over a mountain? Are you going to be e-biking even when it's raining? Think through all of those things when you're considering which e-bike to choose. A couple of other considerations that you want to think through, and if you can forward for me, are maintenance and warranties. And again, this is a huge benefit of riding an e-bike. Most people who drive internal combustion engines spend a lot more than this on maintenance, but average $100 to $150 a year on parts and materials for most e-bikes. So that's going to really help your pocketbook out. But you want to think through, the different types of e-bikes have higher or lower maintenance needs. Most e-bikes are going to come with some sort of warranty. And so think through, what do you need in terms of warranty? And, they're lasting an average of 10 years. So think through, how far in advance do you need to start thinking about replacement? And then I had not thought of insurance until I started seriously looking at e-bikes, but there is insurance available for theft, damage, and accidents. And that's a really good idea if you are able to do that. So again, that's something that you're going to want to research on the specific bikes that you're considering purchasing. Talk to your insurance agent and see what those options are. So as you can see, there's just a lot to think through, and it's going to be different for every single person. Everybody's a little different in what they want to use it for, how they want to use it. All of those financial decisions are really specific to individuals, but these are just 5 areas that you want to make sure that you think through when you're making that consideration. And I think I will turn it over to Amy again.
Thank you, Tammy. Okay, so let's talk about how communities are trying to get electric bicycles to be more common in their communities. There's a few different ways, and one is just to provide easy access for people. For example, Madison, Wisconsin has a public e-bike library, so you can go and check out a bike just like you would check out a book, and you check it out for a predetermined amount of time. There are bike share programs, just as there have been regular bicycle share programs, but this is where a bike can be borrowed or rented from an automated station or docking station and returned to another station belonging to the same system. Communities are also doing a great job, or at least some states and communities, of incentivizing e-bike use. And that can look like rebates. They can sometimes subsidize purchase of an electric bicycle. They can offer point of purchase discounts and offer vouchers toward the purchase of an electric bike. So in addition to these incentives and access issues, communities need to think through some of the infrastructure and support issues that are connected to e-bikes. And I will say e-bikes have the propensity to cause more severe collisions than standard bicycles, just due to the higher speed and velocity. And one of the things you'll see in the few of the community programs that we're going to highlight was that training on electric bicycles, preaching safety issues, just like you would for motorcycles or regular bicycles, is really critical for in the electric bicycle world. And here's just an example. According to the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission, from 2017 to 2020, e-bike injuries have increased by 70%. And so there's a huge opportunity to have people be trained to get a little bit more cognizant of the safety issues involved in biking. And then, we need to think through many of our regulations and community planning efforts really haven't taken e-bikes into account. And that's going to be important going forward. Tammy and I have discussed that a little bit. There was a bill that passed in the last legislative session, Senate Bill 69, which was not totally focused on e-bikes, but there is some language in there around municipalities and how they address electric bicycles and where people can ride electric bicycles. Tammy, do you want to just mention briefly on that, what your thinking is in Albuquerque?
Sure, Amy, thanks. So that is a state law that basically says that class 3 bikes shall be allowed on all paths and bike trails throughout the state unless a city, local jurisdiction overrides that. So they can opt out of that and make their own legislation, their own guardrails around e-bike use. I am unaware of any city or county or local jurisdiction in New Mexico that has done anything beyond that state law, but it is something that's being discussed in Albuquerque quite a bit. There's been some concerns around, allowing class 3 e-bikes on all of our shared pedestrian pathways. The concern is on speed. And I do understand that. And so I'm thinking through options that perhaps maybe focus on the speed you're going, setting speed limits for things like the Bosque Trail and all the Arroyo trails, rather than saying that you can't be on with a certain type of bicycle. But that is all being discussed now. We have a couple of transportation and biking advisory boards that are meeting and discussing this issue now, and I expect to see something coming to city council in the next 3-4 months perhaps. So I think it's going to be a conversation that's going to be eventually held in every local jurisdiction of how do they want to deal with these faster bicycles and trails that may or may not have pedestrians on them as well. So stay tuned, I guess, for more information as we move through that.
Great, thank you, Tammy. Okay, for a few community examples, Pueblo, Colorado started an e-bike pilot program in late 2022, and it was called an e-cycle to own program. It was in partnership with a local nonprofit and the Colorado Energy Office 2021 e-bike pilot program. And through this, they've distributed bicycles to income approved essential workers. And they were targeting a few different goals. They wanted to help people have a healthier lifestyle, but also offer transportation to some of those essential workers who didn't have access to regular car for transportation to and from work. So they piloted it with 42 different e-bikes. They include all the accessories, which I love. So they provide people with a helmet, a U-lock cable, a headlamp, a portable pump, spare tubes, everything that they need to really be successful in using their electric bicycle. What they're going to do now is just collect data for a couple of years and monitor and evaluate the use of these electric bicycles. And one of the other things that they did, they required people who got these bicycles to go through mandatory safety training before they received the bicycles and pass an actual e-bike road test. And so safety was at the top of their mind as well. Tammy, you want to talk about Boulder?
Sure, thanks, Amy. I think this is a really interesting example from Boulder, Colorado, of how to incentivize e-bike use in the community. They basically said, we're going to offer vouchers. And if you want to buy a regular e-bike, you can get a $300 voucher that can be used at the place where you're going to buy the e-bike. If you're going to be going up to the cargo type bike, that goes to $500. And then for low income residents, those numbers really, really expanded. $1,200 for regular e-bikes and $1,400 for e-cargo bikes. And for the low income folks, the income qualified folks, You could also get a $200 voucher for the safety equipment that Amy was talking about that was provided for free in the Pueblo example, but in the Colorado example, in the Boulder example, you can use that voucher for the helmets, the locks, the lights, the child seats, any of those kinds of safety equipments. But because Boulder put aside a limited amount of money for this project, it's a pilot, they then put basically everyone that applied for those vouchers into a giant, hat, and chose randomly out 200 people to receive those vouchers. And I think it's a great way of really getting people excited about e-bikes, but making a kind of a big impact with a small amount of money. And I would say that if you're looking at this for your community, the one thing in New Mexico that I would lean towards would be saying that these are perhaps only for low-income folks, so that we are able to get those bikes out to folks that are in the most need of financial assistance. But that's the program that they did in Boulder, and I do hear that they are looking to repeat it because it seemed to be pretty popular. So, and I think I'm turning it to John for the next example.
Very cool. Yeah, thank you, Tammy. The next example comes from Tampa, Florida, and this is a very similar program to the one that was in Boulder, and that it was a voucher system, and that it also applied different rebate vouchers for income qualified versus market rate participants. So Tampa, Florida launched their e-bike program this past March, and the primary goal for their e-bike program was to reduce congestions on city roads and to improve the vehicle miles traveled and greenhouse gas emissions. The program offered 180 vouchers through a lottery system, and for market rate participants, the vouchers were $500 for residents, and for cargo e-bikes, which tend to be a little bit more expensive, the standard vouchers were $1,000. For income qualified, it was a little bit different. The standard voucher was $1,000 for just normal e-bikes, and then for the cargo bikes, the vouchers were up to $2,000. The program received overwhelming success. Like I said, there were only 180 vouchers that were available, and the city of Tampa received 956 applications by the deadline in April. So I haven't seen anything about whether or not they're planning to open it up again next year, but I would be shocked if they didn't, just based on that kind of response. So with that, we'll talk a little bit about what PNM's doing. So as part of our 2024 through 2026 Transportation Electrification Program, which is currently in front of the New Mexico Public Regulation Commission, PNM has proposed some e-bike incentives. The way that we've proposed the program is that rebates it's not a voucher system or a lottery system. It's really about a rebate. And so how we implement that will be kind of worked out as we, once it gets approval and we start to implement the program. But the way that we envision it is that rebates would be available for market rate participants and income qualified participants. For market rate participants, we've proposed rebates up to $250 for a qualifying e-bike. And for our income qualified customers, we've proposed rebates up to $1,000. The program's stated goals are really twofold. The first one is, all of PNM's transportation electrification programs are aimed at reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And so to that end, we really think that the purpose or the role of e-bikes in that process is to reduce vehicle miles traveled. And so that's the first stated goal, is to reduce vehicle miles traveled. And the second stated goal of the program is really to reduce the financial barriers that a lot of customers might experience, especially for low-income customers or income qualified customers. Like I mentioned, this program is still under review by the New Mexico Public Regulation Commission, so it's not approved yet. But we do expect to receive a final order by March 1st of 2024. And if approved, participants must be PNM customers, and the rebates have to be applied to a qualifying vehicle. And the way that we think about that is to make sure that we're encouraging people to use them to replace car trips. We want to make sure that they're not purely recreational vehicles. So the way that we've defined that is a little fuzzy, but really what it boils down to is that purely recreational vehicles don't qualify for participation. And that's our program. So we're really excited to be able to offer that to customers next year.
Great. Thank you,
And with that, I will
John.
pass it off to Amy. Thank you.
Thanks. And we have just provided some other links of interest when we send this out to participants, more on the proposed Electric Bicycle Act at the federal level, more about the exercise benefits of having an electric bicycle, and just the future and benefits of all kinds of consumer micromobility choices. Here is our contact information. And I'm going to stop sharing the slides for a minute so we can start having a discussion and answering your questions.
And Amy, we do have a couple of questions in the Q&A, so I'm just going to read them out in order.
Right.
From Jim, he said, a comment on some findings from New York City. For maintenance of battery packs, the majority of e-bike fires in the city are due to aftermarket battery use. For maintenance, the user should, if they need to replace the battery, purchase from the manufacturer. I'm going to let John respond to that, I think.
Makes sense.
I really appreciate that comment, Jim, and I would love to talk with you offline about that. Right now, there are some concerns about P&M's program and whether or not the bikes that we're encouraging customers to buy are safe for them to use, safe for them to charge, and that there won't be any sort of fires. And so I'd love to get a little bit more information from you on those findings from New York City and maintenance. I think that would be very helpful in how we design and implement that program for our customers.
And I'll just jump in and say, like everything, please use these vehicles in accordance to the manufacturer's recommendations. Never do aftermarket work that is not approved and not done by a professional. Anytime you start just randomly reusing batteries, that is not a good thing. Okay, Colette, go ahead, John. Sorry.
I was just going to say, the first thing I did when I bought my motorcycle was change the pipes and the air filter and the fuel mapping and all this stuff, right? And so I can imagine a lot of people, when they get their e-bikes, will be very interested in checking them out with aftermarket accessories. And
there are great aftermarket accessories for things like, cargo bins and all those things, but don't change out your batteries, I think. Okay, so from Colette, she asks, does ABQ have any incentives for e-bike purchases? And the city does not. I would love to think through that, but we did just hear from John about the P&M programs that will hopefully be approved early next year. And so we do expect the citizens of Albuquerque to have some options coming up soon, right, John?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, we're really excited to be able to offer that. We've heard from lots of different stakeholders that there's a lot of interest in some sort of an e-bike program. And we think this is a way we can really help increase accessibility for P&M customers. So stay tuned. The best way to learn about updates to that would be to join P&M's EV community, where that's usually where we send out any sort of updates about regulatory filings or program offerings related to transportation electrification. If that's of interest, you can find that at pnm.com/EV updates. There should be a link there for you to sign up.
Okay, Kara asks, how do e-bike injury rates compare to traditional bike injuries? Amy, do you have a response?
No, other than the stats and the information I provided earlier, I don't have much detail. I mean, again, the injuries tend to be more serious because of the speed and velocity that the bicycle's going. And I think it's just, we've got to find that sweet space, right? Of how can we have people really safe on electric bicycles, having them replace their car trips, but really educating them that they've got to be as safe as possible, because you're still out there in a world full of vehicles, and we know how that is. So there are definitely more serious injuries. People, I think, tend to ride e-bikes more on regular streets as well. So it's something that every community is going to have to think through and really plan and educate the public around.
John, did you have something to add?
Just wear your helmet. I mean, I've been on the bike paths here in Albuquerque, and it always amazes me to see folks riding around without a helmet on. Because even on a normal bicycle, on flat level ground, I can get up to 20 miles an hour, and I'm not any sort of an athlete. And I would imagine that if I came to a sudden stop, it would hurt pretty bad. So, yeah, I'm sorry, Kara. I don't have anything to compare e-bike to normal bike injuries, but I'll echo what Amy said, which is take personal responsibility for your safety and wear a helmet, please.
Okay, also from Kara, do you know other jurisdictions that use speed limits, and do those limits apply to e-bikes and bikes? So in New Mexico, I am not aware of any jurisdictions that have done any sort of limitation. And the state law that Amy talked about is the law of the land. And so it basically says that all classes of e-bikes are allowed on all paths and bike paths, walking paths, those kind of, anywhere bikes are allowed, those are allowed. The suggestions that we've been hearing from folks in Albuquerque that are under consideration, but are certainly not being proposed at this point, would say that, yeah, the problem is not e-bikes. The problem is if I'm walking on the Bosque Trail and I have my 5-pound dog with me, I really don't want somebody going 28 miles an hour. I don't care what kind of bike they're on. That interaction where there's pedestrians is not safe. And so anything that would be proposed would of course be all vehicles, there's a speed limit on this path, not anything specific to e-bikes. But again, the state law is what's in place right now. And the state law says all e-bikes are allowed on paths unless a local jurisdiction says otherwise, and no one has said otherwise.
And I think just like John pointed out, we have cyclists on bike paths that are going really fast. And we're already kind of trying to address those problems. So it's not just an e-bike thing. It's something that we need to think about our paths in general and alternative transportation and safety training and things like that. So it happened way before e-bikes even.
I agree with that. John, did you have anything to add?
No, I mean, the only thing that came to mind, Amy, when you were just speaking was, I think it's important just generally to be kind to people when you're out and about, right? Whatever kind of vehicle you're driving, if you're in a car, if you're walking, whatever it is, the vehicle that's blocking your path is also a person, right? There's a person in it. And so that's the only comment that I would add is, it's always good to be kind.
I think that is the best advice of the day. All right, so from Jim, he says, are there stacking of rebates available in any of these areas presented today? I'm going to go to Amy first, and then we'll go to John.
If we're talking about the communities that we profiled, not that I'm aware of, but I am guessing maybe Excel Energy has some kind of rebate in Boulder. I haven't researched that. So those would be, beyond the community level, you'd be looking to your utilities for programs just like John mentioned that PNM is proposing. John, I don't know if you have information on what other utilities are doing across the nation, if they're really working hard on e-bike incentives.
Yeah, there's really not a whole lot of electric utilities right now that are providing e-bike rebates like PNM's proposed. It's a pretty new offering. There are some utilities that are doing interesting things related to e-bikes. The last time I looked, Excel Colorado was offering what they call a community charger program. And so it's kind of a community-based charging infrastructure program that allows folks to charge their EVs, their bicycles, those different types of things like that. I don't know of anything for Tampa, Florida. I don't know of any additional rebates that could be stacked with the one that the city of Tampa has offered. The only thing that I might add is that PNM encourages customers whenever possible to stack incentives to make investments as accessible as possible. And so if the state of New Mexico, for example, or if Bernalillo County or the city of Albuquerque were interested and were able to pass some sort of an e-bike incentive, I think PNM would be amenable to encouraging customers to take advantage of all of the resources that are available to them and to stack those funding sources.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I would say that, particularly in a state like New Mexico, where we have such a high number of folks that are living at or near the poverty line, we want to be able to offer as many incentives that they can stack as possible in all of these programs. So I think that's an important thing to consider as we're thinking through any incentive programs that I'd like to propose for the city of Albuquerque or any other local jurisdictions. Reaching out to the utility to make sure that they fit together is always a really good idea. I do not see any other questions, but I just want to make sure folks have another minute to put in anything else in the Q&A that they would like. And while I'm waiting to see if there is any additional comments, do we want to close? Amy, do you want to offer any final thoughts?
Yeah, I did notice there is a comment in the chat, and that actually is from Colin Messer, I believe, who's logged in as Amy Miller, but Colin Messer is the executive director of the Land of Enchantment Clean Cities Coalition. You will see him riding a bike everywhere. If he's in a car, I'm usually worried something has happened. So, but he just put in a comment saying bike shops tell him that they are seeing e-bikes purchased from non-dealer supported suppliers that are questionable quality. These bikes show up for repair at bike shops and are not repairable. Again, consult with your local bike shop for your e-bike purchase to support local businesses. And it's just like anything else. If you're buying a car or something else, you want it to be quality. You want it to be safe for you and your family, and you want to support local business at the same time. So just wanted to bring that comment up. Are there any other questions or comments at this time from participants? We're ending a little early, which I'm guessing people will appreciate. We will make this available. This is being recorded, and we'll make this link available to people who were not able to attend today. Any other questions, comments, follow-up statements? Tammy and John?
Thanks, Amy. I would just say that, I'm really excited about the potentials for e-bikes, particularly in New Mexico and Albuquerque. I think that they could really be a huge part of our statewide climate action plan, reducing both carbon emissions from vehicles and also getting people healthier and off the roads in their internal combustion engine vehicles. And so if that's something that you're interested in too, I really do recommend that you reach out to your state legislators and your local elected officials to tell them that you support e-bikes and maybe share with them the examples that we shared with you today to say you'd like to see something like that in your community. I think they're incredibly valuable for every resident, particularly low income residents. And I think that that's something that we should be focused on both at the local and at the state level. So hopefully we can get some interest from other elected officials and move forward on some programs like the ones we talked about today here for New Mexicans.
John, anything else you would like to add?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would what's the right word? Mimic everything that Tammy said. That's not the right word, but that's what I'm thinking, right? I would yes, absolutely, 100% that. But also, if you're a PNM customer, I would encourage you to sign up for PNM's EV community if this is an interesting program for you, or if you're interested in other forms of electric transportation. And then if you're not a PNM customer, I would encourage you to call your electric utility and let them know that you're interested in programs like this. A lot of times I think utilities aren't always up to speed with everything that customers want, because it can be hard to talk to utilities, or it can be hard for utilities to talk to customers sometimes. And so if this is interesting and your utility is not doing it, then call your utility rep, call your customer service line, whatever that might be, to encourage them to look at programs. And then if you are a P&M customer and you have feedback or improvements that you would like to see, I would encourage you to submit that feedback as well. P&M does the best that we can with what we have, but we always need new, improved, and better ideas. So please feel free to reach out. My contact information, I think Amy displayed it in the slide deck, which will be provided. So we'd love to hear your thoughts and work with you.
Great, thank you, John. And, you know, if any of you have interest in other topics related to electric transportation, please let us know. Tammy and I worked on an EV charging infrastructure webinar the last couple of years for businesses and communities that are looking at adding EV charging infrastructure. So send us your ideas, your questions. We'd be more than glad to help you and maybe even put together a webinar on a topic that would be of interest to you. So thank you very much. We appreciate you joining us this morning, and go out and shop for an e-bike.